Hi there, Colleen Adrian here today. I'm starting off this series talking about adrenal fatigue and sharing a little bit of my story with adrenal fatigue and my experiences with it. It's a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. And the reason for that is it's been really central to lots of the health challenges that I've had and lots of the parenting, some of the parenting challenges and some of the symptoms and some of the effects of the adrenal fatigue have really impacted my ability to be the parent that I want to be. So, and I really had a hard time figuring out how to get better or how to help myself get better from the symptoms. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. Some of the symptoms that I struggled with as a result of the adrenal fatigue were difficulty sleeping and fairly severe insomnia, as in waking at 2 a.m. Every night pretty much. And, being awake for often, 3 hours was pretty typical. And I'll explain some of these a little bit more of detail in a moment, but I'll just list them first. So another one was low energy, right? So, which turned out to be related to the adrenal function and Hashimoto's thyroiditis, right? So low thyroid function was an issue. Brain fog was huge, poor mental clarity, and there was a whole lot of things that were difficult for me as a result of that. And nervous system regulation is really difficult. So calming yourself, getting grounded, really difficult when your adrenals aren't functioning for a few reasons. And last but not least, digestive problems as well, which I'll talk about in another video. So I'll just give you a little bit more detail about some of those now and some of the things that I really experienced. So the waking from 2 to 5 a.m., that's really pretty common. It's also common with adrenal problems or adrenal fatigue, sometimes to have difficulty going to sleep. And I didn't have as much trouble getting to sleep in the evening, but I certainly had trouble laying down and napping during the day. When my son was an infant, other wiser, experienced moms often tell you to lay down and sleep when your child is sleeping. And I could just never do that because I couldn't actually drop off to sleep. He didn't tend to nap very long, and I couldn't drop off to sleep easily enough to actually get to sleep and have a nap before he woke up again, especially if he was only napping for 45 minutes. And I didn't know that at the time, but I know now that that's a result of high cortisol levels. So the sleep problems really started early on. As I said, the difficulties with napping. And then even when my son started sleeping for longer stretches at night, when he was around 7 months old, he started sleeping for maybe a 6 or 7 hour stretch from, 11 maybe or 12 until 6 in the morning. I still had difficulty with sleep. I would still be awake consistently almost every night at around 2 a.m. And then, of course, he would typically wake up at around 5 in the morning. And I know that's common for really little children, but that carried on for him through his early years and even into his early school years, which started to make it problematic for him to try to focus and so on. And again, I didn't know at the time, but I know now that because our hormonal levels as parents, especially the mom or the primary caregiver, our hormonal levels and our ability to regulate our nervous system, which are really closely linked, those factors affect whether your child can sleep or not. And so he was waking up early as well, right? So yeah, this struggles and challenges that I was having was filtering down into his nervous system and his system overall as well. Low energy, I mentioned. That was problematic for lots of reasons as well. It was really difficult to keep up with some of the things that I needed to do physically with a young child and with a toddler, and also just to maintain the household and stuff. I was easily fatigued. Um, couldn't do some of the physical things that I wanted to do with him. You know, I'd always been fairly active physically, and I really wanted to be able to do a lot more stuff outdoors in nature with my son as he was growing up, cycling, going for hikes, and so on. And I really, you know, I've had little pockets of grief over the years because of my inability to do as much of that as I really wanted to during those years. And, you know, I'll balance that off and say I've certainly had, certainly have a lot of gratitude as well for the amount of health that I have had. There were things that I would have loved to have been able to do, and I also couldn't. Brain fog. This was probably one of the other really big challenges that I faced that I don't even think that I was quite as acutely aware of as I was until after I went to see a naturopath when my son was 9. And I think that's because, you know, when you do have brain fog, it's hard to have clarity about what's actually going on. So it really took the outside eyes of the naturopath when I went to see her, and then you know, helping me understand the difficulties that I was having with my mental clarity. And I was easily overwhelmed. I had a hard time organizing even fairly simple things sometimes, especially towards the end of the day when I got more mentally fatigued. You know, as you know, as a mother, there's, you know, hundreds of things that you need to sort of be on top of and organize for your child. And especially if you have more than one child, and then running the household and anything else that you might be doing with your family or whatever. I just had a really hard time organizing even fairly simple things because of the brain fog, easily overwhelmed. Sometimes probably was more irritable with my son than I would have hoped. Again, because you know, when you're overwhelmed, it can feel, you know, I call it feeling like life is on top of you instead of feeling like you're on top of life. You know, instead of having that feeling of I've got this, you know, I'm organized, I'm on top of things, you sort of feel like things are on top of you, right? And it's that overwhelming feeling um like you can't quite, like you're not going to be able to manage, or like it's not going to be okay, right? So those things, I think, when you're feeling like that, that filters down to your children, and that can be overwhelming for your children as well, and can cause anxiety or overwhelm in your kids. And I do think that, you know, in hindsight, again, you know, I did my best, and I think there was times when I probably overwhelmed my son without meaning to, right? It was just the best I could do, and it wasn't great all the time. Brain fog and forgetfulness made it difficult to be a consistent parent, right? And consistency creates safety and it creates predictability for your kids. And I just couldn't always remember to handle similar situations consistently from one day to the next because I was struggling with the brain fog and the fuzziness in my head, and also struggling with forgetfulness as a result, right? My memory was affected by the hormonal challenges as well. So it was really difficult to be consistent about setting limits as well. Moving on to talk about nervous system regulation is really difficult when your adrenals aren't functioning well and your cortisol is high. Typically, when your adrenals are challenged, what happens is your cortisol goes into the high level that is normal to be in when you're in a stress state. But of course, stress states aren't meant to last for days and weeks and months on end. So when your cortisol is high over a long period of time, that impacts um, your stress level, right? You feel it in your body. You might feel more edgy. I know for me, when I have a high cortisol, it also causes hunger, and I tend to crave fat and sugar more than normal. And I also have a lot of trouble sleeping, right? Cortisol keeps you awake. There's when you look at the normal levels for cortisol, and you know, I'm not an expert in this, but I know just generally it goes up and down during the day. And I'm pretty sure one of the peak times is meant to be morning. So typically when we get up in the morning, our cortisol kind of goes up and peaks sometime in the morning, and then it falls off later in the day. And it's meant to be, at a lower level at bedtime when it's time to go to sleep, right? Um, yeah, so to go back to what I was talking about, the nervous system regulation is really difficult when you're having adrenal fatigue problems, and probably abnormal levels of your other adrenal hormones too, such as your adrenaline, and inappropriate kind of responses of your adrenals. And then just an overall low of your energy, right? So it just makes it really hard to regulate your nervous system. The digestive problems I will talk about in another video, but I wanted to share this story just in case there's anybody out there who might be having some of these symptoms, just to let you know that if it resonates and if some of this stuff feels like, oh yeah, I think some of that might be going on with me, you know that it's an option, a possibility. Again, I'm not prescribing, but it's a possibility that a naturopath might be able to help, right? Because I had tried a lot of different things for a lot of years. I had tried lots of energy healing modalities, and some physical things as well, acupuncture, and I still go for acupuncture on a fairly regular basis. And I'll share again in another video about some of the modalities that I've worked with. But I had tried lots of things to help with my sleep, and there was nothing, there was an occasional thing that might help me sleep for a night, and then I'd go back to waking up at 2 in the morning. It wasn't until 2012, when my son was 9 years old, that I really met a naturopath, and in a conversation with her, I discovered and realized that I probably had adrenal fatigue. And then I started going to see a naturopath regularly, and we started working through the layers, because I'm pretty sure that the initial life experiences that contributed to my adrenal fatigue started in my earlier years. And then there was more and more layers that got laid on top of that. And in particular, I went to nursing school when I was 17. I graduated at 20. And then I spent the first 10 years of my nursing career, 10 or 12 years, doing shift work, right? And often they were 12-hour night shifts. So that kind of shift work really, really added a strain to my adrenals over and above what was already there. So for me, it took between 8 and 10 years of taking different types of adrenal supports, and then gradually weaning myself off, so that I'm at the point now, it's 2024 as I'm recording this, and I don't need to take very much adrenal support anymore. Just once in a blue moon, I'll take something. I know my body well enough to know my own symptoms, but I don't need to take those on a regular basis. I'm just looking at my notes here to see if there's anything else I wanted to share. I am so glad that I discovered naturopathic help when I did, and if I could do it over again, I really would have gone even sooner. I just simply didn't know that, sleep difficulties can be related to adrenal fatigue or to hormonal issues, such as adrenal or thyroid. I had no idea that adrenal fatigue was even a thing, right? I didn't know what caused it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to treat it. And I certainly didn't know it could be a cause of brain fog or contribute to the really huge overwhelm I often felt when my son was quite young. So that's all I have to share about that today. If you have any questions or comments, or you want to share your own experience in the comments below, I'd be happy to hear your experiences as well, or reply to your questions or comments. So thank you for listening. I hope it was helpful. Take good care. Bye.